and I'm going to hand over to David. So thank you everyone who's been online with us. This session is changing gears now. We're going to go into a Riskology or a RiskWare conversation. Again, it's one element of software, but it doesn't mean that it's the be all and end all. We're very lucky to have some very supportive sponsors. People in the room are standing and stretching, so please do that for online guests as well. We're lucky to have some really supportive sponsors of the association, and RiskWare is one of those, and also Lisa J. Stevens, who we've heard from earlier. So that's great. Echo Shin's thanks for the conference organising team, and also to the executive group that we've got. So Mark, Shin, Cindy, Glenn, Mikhail and John. And then also to all our SIG and branch chairs as well. So Mark, Brendan, Natasha, Charles, Felicity, Maria, Emilio and Cara. And notice there might have been a bit of repeating of names there. There are several people who wear dual hats or tri hats in some cases. So really appreciate that. But with one eye on the future and following the lead that Shin set with an international conference, the executive will be talking about what we do next year. So there is a World Congress of Safety Health at Work in 2023 that will be hosted in Sydney. So the executive will be considering if that is the best use of our resources. And it will also put us again on that international stage, but also connect us to other industries as well. So my closing words will be, again, following on from some of the notes in sessions that we've had, is keep collaborating. I think that's what we do really well, and hopefully we'll be doing a lot, much more of. But also to some of the parting messages that we've been throughout the conference is about making some noise. We do awesome work, and we've got a lot of awesome work to do, but let's tell people about it as well. So warning to the 2 recipients of our awards, you will be all over social media. So thank you very much. But thank you everyone in the room as well. Cheers. Over to you, David.
Thanks, Teresa. Just for anybody that's not interested in the RiskWare information, you're most welcome to make your way straight away. For those online, feel free to log out now. Understand. For everyone else, we do have a booking just around the corner at Peter Rabbit. So if you're not interested in some software-related conversations, please go make yourself comfortable around the corner. It's a booking under my name. I probably should have put it under Pan Learning. So booking for David Hurst. Yeah, okay. Well, hopefully you've all had enough of a stretch. If you need a bit more of a stretch, I'm very okay with that. We've got a few things to get through today, but I might do a bit of an abridged session, conscious of time, and aim ultimately to finish around 12 in any case. So yeah, thank you very much to AUSA for organising and hosting this conference opportunity and the extra Thursday. It's been a really great conference and a lot to take home and think about. Today, I just want to run through 2 upcoming, I guess, items for 2023, being inspections and risk assessments. Before a quick catch up on some news. For those of you online, I don't think we have a sound connection, so please type in the Teams chat. And actually, just 1 second. Sorry about that. All right, I'll just press on. Okay, so workplace inspections. Many of you will know that I came from Monash University, and I was involved in various projects to uplift workplace inspections over the course of probably close to a decade, starting with some paper-based tools, moving to some digital tools, but I guess ultimately leaving with some sense of frustration that project was a very challenging, almost poison chalice-like project. And I can sense from some of the giggles that I'm not alone in that journey. But I know I'm not alone because part of my role at PAN is to work with the tertiary sector very closely. And what's absolutely brilliant about that sector is the ease and freedom in which issues and challenges are communicated and brought forward. So a number of the unis around Australia have been communicating that they've got a real goal moving forwards to really streamline and enhance the workplace inspection tool set. So just very briefly, what is an inspection? Oh, I've lost my slides. That's all right. Technology. That's okay. There's some slides, but technology. Oh, I have to join? Yeah, I have to join that. Technology. I think that's it. Yeah, this is good because I can see different options when I go to present. Technology. I just realised I probably did skip a quick step as well. What is Riskology? So, as I was just mentioning, the tertiary sector is a very engaged and some sound echoes going on too. Very engaged section that why is this still sound? Yeah, it's just my computer. I'll go over here. Can they hear? Can they hear us on digital land? Bit echo. I think I was standing too close to the microphone, so I'll just run away. Technology. Okay, so Riskology formed early on in the journey. It was actually one of the first members between PAN and tertiary sector to really open the floor and have conversations around where things can go and how we can do better. Maybe it's another speaker. Sorry guys for the echo. We've got the brightest minds working on it. Thanks, Charles. So yeah, Riskology is open invite for the tertiary clients to come and raise questions and share ideas. Today's a bit of an abridged version, but we can get quite into the detail and really share. This inspection focus group is an initiative to explore what the future of workplace inspection tools can look like, and I guess ultimately to build something that will work to meet all of those requirements. Can I press the next button, Charles? Hey, okay. So in 45001, there's a great section on monitoring. I really like that standard. And it does sort of capture a lot of the kinds of things we're talking about with inspections, but particularly that they're systemic and planned. So we're going around and appraising a workplace in a very intentional manner, which is different from a task observation or a spot check, where we might just be coming in on an anecdotal ad hoc type basis to check systems of work. So the purpose, I suppose, there's a few different things, but number one, the first thing people think of is that kind of baseline measure. What does the ground look like? Where are things appearing, and what do those things look like? Also, what activities are we doing? You know, if I walk through and see a new piece of equipment I've never seen before, picking that up through the inspection program and saying, what is this? I've had a few conversations like that over the years. It's a hyperpolarizer. Next, thanks, Charles. But there's some more obvious and perhaps, compliance-driven obligations, identifying hazards in the workplace, ultimately ensuring that safe work environment. Next. And I guess from my experience, a lot of that is less about walking around with a magnifying glass and trying to identify every possible activity and write the risk assessments on the spot, and more about engaging with the workforce in that area to try and understand what they see as the risks and where they see improvement. So it becomes a consultative piece that I suspect most tools today don't really capture. Next, just hit twice. Yeah, I think it's the other sound, Charles. I think there's like, I've gone to Windows 11. I have great regret. Oh, dear. Oh, you can do it here. Okay. It's this. Okay, but it is muted. How about now? That sounds good. There's 2 sound controllers in Windows. Who knows why? Okay, and then if we could just maybe blow that one up too, that would be good. Okay, so the other half of the workplace inspection that I think might have been overlooked over the years is a very positive approach, and it's really about seeing best practice and seeing good practice and encouraging good practice. So it's about sharing ideas to work better and about praising really good behaviours. So how can we design a tool that encompasses sort of all of those things, a baseline, a clear chunk of data that tells us what we do and how we do it, the issues, the hazards, the concerns, what are we doing that needs actioning, but furthermore, where are we doing really well and how can we share that across an organisation? And yes, when it comes to the methodology that people are following, organisations are following, there is a lot of difference in the way tools are designed and the way tools are used. There are, of course, quite a lot of similarities. A lot of organisations with very long lists of questions, probing the deepest, darkest secrets of your laboratories and workplaces. So it's a great quote here: if you're not innovating, you're slowly dying. Maybe perhaps a little bit dark in theme, but an excellent reminder that we need to continually improve. We need to innovate to find a better path. And if we stop doing that, then we really lose our place. It's just a bit delayed there, I think. And for Pan Software, we translate these into our 4 product objectives: reimagining, customizing, delivering a UI UX experience for our end user, and enhancing and streamlining data analysis. So now it's done a lot of things here. I think it's that one. Looks good. I've put together a quick example. Gosh, that's small. How do I zoom in here? Like that. Okay, hopefully you can see that. Of just it's very delayed, isn't it? Oh no, I've got to change. That's why. Okay. Here's one I prepared earlier, just a sample of what a workplace inspection tool might look like in your workplace. You know, we want to track who the inspector is, who the team is, pick up perhaps information around the location. That's a bit disconcerting. And perhaps come up with some categories that we want to identify activities that are included in that inspection. When we add those categories, we want to see additional information for the inspector about the nature of that activity and the risks. So here, for example, we've got this simple question: were they managed safely? And presumably if we tick no, we're going to encourage that user to log some actions to insert safe systems of work. But, you know, thinking about the broader context of inspections, I suppose we should ask, is there another way or perhaps a better way? So one thing that I've started exploring with a couple of unis is a more qualitative system for workplace inspection. So rather than just simply a black and white, is it good, is it bad? And if bad, what actions can we do? But what about some sort of graduated scale that enables the user to say, today it was really bad, and today it was actually quite good. Possibly we'll need more dimensions to really start to unpick which things are good and which things are bad, because perhaps there's a certain area of weakness, but on the whole, things are very good. So, there's an idea to explore. And then further to that, something that I observed many times throughout the years was the competency of the inspector. So we might take for granted that someone knows how to assess a hazard in a workplace, but when we stand behind them and watch them work, we might form different views that they're not necessarily picking up the types of hazards and concerns that we expected them to see. So potentially some sort of competency evaluation type tool to assess and understand what that inspector is finding. They're really just there to, I guess, plant the seed about what the future could hold. So the way that, okay, that's good, but also not quite what I had in mind. That's better. So one way that we can really quickly unpick this is with something called user stories. So we can ask ourselves, as an inspector, I would like to report a hazard or incident during an inspection. This one came up a couple of weeks ago, so that's a really good idea. So rather than just put in an action, maybe a future could be where I conduct an inspection and simply use a hazard report to communicate what I found. And the goal of that might be so that it can get fixed whilst respecting the complexities of managing change in a very large organisation. So my experience is an inspector might come in and see a cable on the floor, but they've got very little power over that room and building, and they really need to engage a much wider segment of the university to really permanently improve that risk. So an idea sort of there. Another one that's come up is the large number of locations being inspected. So it's very common for an inspection team to inspect a whole building. They might encompass a large number of labs. We want a really simple way for them to be able to say, I'm doing all of this. And that way we can, for example, tell which areas have been inspected and perhaps most importantly, which areas haven't. We might want to report our findings at specific areas or across a large number of areas. So that might be distinct from the areas inspected. I've gone and done all this area, but I only found one issue in that room over there in the corner. So then we can quickly identify where the problem itself was, and we can address that immediate problem without losing sight that it was part of a bigger picture of inspection. And we might want to be able to insert calendar entries so that when an inspection program is set up, everyone has it in their calendar and they know to go and do those at the set time rather than sort of panicked emails and phone calls. So I suppose this is really setting the scene for the first focus group that we'd like to start at through Riskology, which is for workplace inspections. So essentially after this, for our clients, I'll send round an enrolment process and have a think about members of your team that you think would really enrich that exploration so that we can start to really delve into the detail and build something that really is going to tick all the boxes. So more information to come, but I just wanted to open the floor now quickly. What do you think? Any thoughts, ideas? Questions? And Rory, can you run around with the mic if there is anyone? Maybe there's no one anyway. No one? Anyone online?
Was much more positive comment because I normally do a bit negative, right? So, right. So yesterday I had a look of your inspection module, right? I must say it's great. It's great. It's so easy to build and so easy to use. Doesn't require numerous amount of language, computer language exercise. At the moment, I'm also rolling out a inspection module for Sorrow, and it does require a lot of computer language understanding. right? So, but it's fully customizable as well, right? But yours is much simpler, in that fashion.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Yeah, that is something that we've identified and something we're very proud of, but also something that puts the ownership of these tools back in the tertiary sector. I think for probably too long, there's been a dependence on the software vendor to dictate how systems run within a university setting. I think Pan's vision is very much to change that dynamic back towards ownership within the tertiary sector. So to do that, we knew we needed to provide a configurable tool that someone like me can use as a former safety consultant. So hopefully that path will lend itself to really building out. We know our competitors can do a lot of the same sorts of things, but our hope and goal is that we can do it in a way that leaves ownership of that back in groups like AUSA.
Thanks, David. First thing, is Norel McCallum involved with this?
Heck yes.
Thank you. I will leave it to her. I will work with her because part of my role will be with chemical management, so I'm pretty sure that the inspections will have to encompass everything that I need to know about that for that. So we use a different system now, but it makes total sense to change to this module incorporated into the RiskWare and have the reporting and the inspection program and the risk assessment all in one. And what I did like from your presentation is that having that inspection going through, that you can immediately link it to the hazard report, because at the moment we are using two separate systems, so there will be an advantage. So thank you.
Great feedback.
May I ask a question on that, sorry, as well? With the linkage to hazard and incident reports and corrective actions, how does that all fit together? Does that connect, or how is that managed?
Yeah, so thinking about those user case stories is probably the step we're at now. Obviously, we have a fully fledged module for running these sorts of programs, but this focus group is really to start building out the next, big leap towards that inspections tool. And so I suppose at the moment it's more of a vision than any specific function. Having said that, I do have a sort of a vision that when you're responding to, it's a bit hard for me to alt tab and talk, responding to a question, at the moment you might have 3 answer types, yes, no, maybe. Maybe there's an answer type, hazard report. When you click that, magic happens. Corrective actions, separate workflow, separate management, but critically a permanent link so that the inspector can see that often the inspector is quite distinct from the hazard process, but they still need to know that it's getting worked on. So they can still come through their checklist and see this one was answered with, we need hazard reports. They can see the status of the hazard reports, but don't need to get involved in the nitty-gritty of how did they resolve tidying up the cable. They just want to know it's been resolved as far as we understand. It does lead to another requirement that comes up regularly, which is as an inspector, what happened last time? So we've got some vision in mind there too, so that as I'm walking through a space, I can quickly flick back to previous inspections and go, has anything been found in this room previously? Or indeed, with that integrated approach, are there hazard reports outstanding that I've got visibility on in here? Because I could check off on those as I'm doing my round. So I suppose the sky starts to be the limit when we open up that integration, but often these development processes are really in those sort of minimum viable product concepts of, would it really help us if? And if the answer is yes, let's build out that piece.
We just have one comment more than a question from a person online. Connor Wood, who's joining us from SA Health, SA Pathology, said the idea of qualitative responses in inspections is fantastic. Too many inspections just have a completely negative tone that really puts users off. So not sure whether you want to add comments to that?
Totally agree. And I think my early experiences at Monash were, here come the inspectors, run. I think that's safe to say. JT's nodding. And that's not helpful to anyone. I mean, okay, you don't find much, but we're not really addressing safety. We're not really building a community. So coming up with a way to engage the workforce in that journey and not just talk in terms of you've been naughty, but talk in terms of you guys are really, really good. I've been doing in a professional sense previously, and I know many teams do, but the record keeping hasn't kept up with that. So the conversations might happen. You might be down on the ground going, wow, I've never seen someone build such a, I can immediately think of a carcinogen where they had labeled every item in the room and color coded it and made it exceptionally clear. As soon as you walked in, anything that color you're not touching. And there's no training required to figure that out. You know, we should see that and we should recognize that with our data, rather than the fact that in that very same room, one item wasn't tested and tagged. I mean, that's really a distraction from their good work. We still want to record that, that's important, but we also want to make the real message that, hey, this is awesome work. And the same applies to the audit system. So I know in the past, it's all been about conformance versus non-conformance, or if you prefer compliance and non-compliance, but there's an opportunity there, I think, to talk about best practice and you know, success. So the auditor can come in and say, okay, yeah, I found some improvements, I found some things, but success is what I mostly saw. These guys are doing an exceptional job in a meaningful way. Great questions. Yeah.
One thing that annually needs to happen in our workplaces is emergency evacuations and things like that, because that's something that we can tuck into the inspections, because we don't actually do that as a checklist, but we do find things when those things happen regularly that could link in. So
yes, here's one I haven't prepared earlier, but that's such a good point that, sorry, it's probably a bit quiet. Here's one I haven't prepared earlier, but such a good point that I do want to jump on that and explore that just for a moment. So one of the activities that we could add into our, is that Sharon? Yep, I got that right, is, for example, emergency preparedness, just put P, and we can insert a new grouping for that. And we can tailor some questions to suit those requirements. I think what's really interesting about that example is, in my experience, it's often a different team to the team that are detailed on the chemicals. And I think there's good reason for that. Often in a tertiary setting, the building wardens are derived from staff that are always there and don't have other duties all the time. And so it lends itself to teams that are often not in the laboratory space. And so you want to have a team member who's an inspector and a team member who's a building warden, and you don't necessarily want that to be the same person. The challenge then comes up that the systems are now, we're getting patchy, and they might be really good with the chemicals, but not so good with their emergency preparedness. In addition to that, you might still have some teams where the emergency preparedness is part of their work. And so you end up with kind of bits and pieces. And I know I've seen inspection tools that go into first aid, but in the same organisation, we have a first aid assessment process completely distinct from that. And we just say, well, it's better to check it a few times than not at all, which is quite valid. So one of the things we can do is expand out that in the tool, but enable the option. The other capacity we have is to limit what somebody can see based on their role. And so Monash has already started exploring this in terms of investigation with incidents. So not just allowing anyone to access investigation, but limit it to specific roles. I wonder if the same sort of thinking would work well in the inspection program, where if we could see you're a building warden, if you open up the inspection tool, you'll see all the building warden information. If you're a safety related role that's not emergency, you'll see all of the safety related questions. And if you're both, well, you'll see both sets of questions. So we can build that now. And that's exactly the kind of thing that this focus group, I hope, will really pull out into a list that we can all agree on and say, yes, if we tick all of that, we've really made a giant leap forwards.
Will you be able to import checklists from other software?
As in mentioned, it's really not difficult to build. And another example, a university gave me the internal management system tool, which is averaging 50 something pages. And we had the template implemented within, I think it was 2 hours. So if you've got a whole lot of questions, maybe 2.5 hours. It's not, and it doesn't need to be completed by a programmer. In the case of this organisation, it was one of their administrative staff. did the conversion. I think the other part of this that I see the synergy with AUSA, a little bit like Rewire, where there's a bit of a hardware software component, but there's also that theoretical component. I do wonder if there's an opportunity to start alignment across organisations of the specifics that are being assessed. I apologise to anyone that then subsequently ends up in that working group, but I'd love to be part of it. You know, so really getting into the detail, because a lot of this legislation is national and the stuff that isn't might as well be. And so if we come up with a set of questions that we think is going to work really well in a Victorian large university, feel fairly confident they'd probably work well in a large Queensland university. But I guess the proof is in the pudding. So, I mean, we could start that in parallel, is just to pull out whatever the tools are, quite distinct from some of these other challenges. Like, I guess I should also add, the qualitative thing can totally transform the question. So if you're thinking purely in terms of yes, no, you'll ask a binary question, was it like this? But when you start adding qualitative measures, then you want to talk about some sort of scale from how good was it? And then sometimes when you move to that, it can result in more questions than the binary. And in other times, it can take a whole lot of binary questions and bring them down to a single sliding scale. So I suppose the devil will be in the detail a little bit there. But nonetheless, maybe you could do it a little bit like a key learning outcomes list to say these are the essential items that a workplace inspection would need to qualify for an AUSA workplace inspection. Just putting some thoughts out there. I can see a lot of thoughts happening.
Right. Thank you very much, David.
No worries.
And Pan Software.